Further debate? I recognize the member for Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes Brock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise today to speak on Motion 8, the intimate partner violence, brought forward by my colleague, the Associate Minister responsible for Women's Social and Economic Opportunity, Minister Williams, and of course the great work done on the Intimate Partner Violence Committee work by my colleague from Kitchener South Hespeler, Jess Dixon. We've had this discussion for many years since I've been in the legislature, and it's going to continue on, and we're going to continue to debate supports in our attempt to end violence against women, intimate partner violence, what we're talking today, because every day in Ontario there are women, children and families living in fear of someone they know, someone they once trusted. And it is a heartbreaking reality, and we've all been with members of our community hearing these heart-wrenching stories. And we can no longer view them as isolated incidents. Intimate partner violence is not new, it's not sudden, and it's not temporary. It's endemic, deeply rooted, persistent, and present in every community across our province. Today, our government stands united in formally recognizing that reality, because when we speak the truth about the scope of the problem, we take the first step towards ending it. And as a government, and as has been said by many of the colleagues, especially the two that I've mentioned, the words we choose matter. And this definition is deliberate, it's thoughtful, and it's grounded in evidence. We know that the language alone does not protect people, but language shapes the understanding, and understanding drives action. The word endemic is not used lightly. It does not appear overnight, and it will not disappear on its own. It's rooted in attitudes, inequities, and histories that have been passed from generation to generation. By calling it endemic, we are acknowledging that this is not a temporary crisis, but an ongoing challenge that demands a long-term response. This definition aligns Ontario with the World Health Organization, leading academics, and members from across this legislature who have recognized the same truth. In doing so, we're sending a clear message. Violence has no place in Ontario, not in our homes, not in our workplace, not anywhere. Our government has made it clear we have zero tolerance for violence against women. That principle guides every law we pass and every dollar we invest. Because every woman, every person, deserves to live in safety and dignity, free from intimidation and the threat of violence. We also recognize and celebrate the front-line workers, community leaders, advocates and survivors who dedicate their lives to ending this cycle. Their courage, their compassion, and their persistence are the foundation of this work. We owe them not only our gratitude, but our partnership and our continued support. Madam Speaker, you've been in the House a length of time as I have been. We have shared many names of people that we have spoken to over the years, where it's Victim Services in Durham, Victim Services in Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes, Victim Services Toronto with Carly Kalish, who still informs us weekly. I have a call with her to see what next steps we can take, because we are going to have to take further steps, and we all know it, and it's heart-wrenching. But we are part of the solution by being elected members and having this podium and taking actions. And I know we debate which actions, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. But at the end of the day, the goal is always about ending the violence against women and people in this province. So our government's commitment is not just spoken, it is demonstrated through action. And we've taken concrete steps to strengthen protection for women, expand prevention efforts, and support survivors. We passed new laws, some of them the first of their kind in Canada, to make it harder to victimize women and easier for survivors to access justice. Now I'm going to mention a few pieces of legislation that we have worked on. And when I said first in Canada, I want to give a shout out to the Minister of Education at the time, Minister Lecce, who passed the Ontario Acts to protect students from sex trafficking. $2.4 million investment to mandate all boards to implement anti-trafficking plan, the first of its kind in Canada. Training the people that educate our children, giving them the resources. And again, it's education, but it is education for all of us, for the parents, for the students, protecting our children. This is generational, trying to end violence. And many of you know that I have had many pieces of legislation to combat human sex trafficking, so I'm quite proud of the work that we have done, multi-ministry work that we have done since we've been in government. And I know that Minister Thompson, who was Minister of Education before, had certainly started that work. Some of my new colleagues in the legislature, the now Minister of Colleges and University, MPP from Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry, was his Bill 123, Aaron's Law, that amends the Education Act to require school boards to implement programs for child sexual abuse prevention and reporting. And it mandates the school boards must establish policies to actually engage students in age-appropriate discussions on the topics, provide information to parents and guardians, offer training to teachers and staff. So it's it's allowing a comfort area where children that might have been abused can report safely in our schools. Another piece that has been brought forward by our great members. The member from Thornhill and I did an act to amend the Name Change Act in 2023 so that convicted sex offenders under Christopher's Law, we stopped them from legally changing their names in Ontario. They could hide their identities. They could be in jail and change their names before they get out, and unassuming communities are suspect to victimization by repeated offenders. I know that the Solicitor General has worked very hard with those members to get us this far in the Safe Streets Act, I believe it was. I have lots of pieces of paper that makes changes to education. The Solicitor General, I just have to look for this piece of paper because I had it also nicely put out. The Solicitor General at the time, Minister Sylvia Jones, brought in legislation for further protections and access to justice. The Ministry of Tourism, so that hotels and motels would more freely give their guest registry if there was something the police needed, that there's untoward action that was going on at those hotels. And I know Minister Lisa MacLeod at the time worked passionately on many angles of violence against women and the human trafficking that we have raised awareness about, has been prevalent, and have brought in much action to combat that. Trying to just remember, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health, of course, has been involved. The present Minister of Health, who was the Solicitor General at the time, brought in legislation for further protections and awareness. And we continue as MPPs to educate in our communities. And I know that the member from Kitchener South Hespeler was an advocate with the Minister of Education, Minister Lecce, in coaching boys to men, which is through the Interval House out of Hamilton. But working with the Ministry of Education, that program has now spread across all of Ontario. And I know that the member that just spoke before me said about education for men and boys. We absolutely need to do that. And there's good examples in our communities, and we need to push those further ahead. So I know I'm speaking a lot of past examples, and I'm not naming them all, but I just want to say I'm very proud of our government collectively, who has multi-ministries worked together to combat anti-human trafficking, violence, get more access to justice in our systems. I want to comment on the Associate Minister, with her launch of Ontario Stands, which is a province's action plan to prevent and respond to gender-based violence. Through Ontario Stands, they're investing $1.4 billion to address and prevent gender-based violence, and this is one of the largest commitments of its kind in Ontario's history, and it's long-term commitment. And it is working with the final report for the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Through there, she's launched Pathways to Safety. And there's unique challenges faced by Indigenous women and girls, as was mentioned by my colleague, MPP Salma Makwa. She's established an Indigenous Women's Advisory Council that guides the approach. I myself have worked with many Indigenous communities through the years to fight violence against women, and the uniqueness is there, and I'm so proud of their incredible leadership of the women in the Indigenous communities. It is really amazing, and I know it's going forward even farther. But it's the funding that supports frontline agencies, shelters, counseling services, prevention programs. All this makes a real difference in people's lives. And every dollar is an investment in safety, prevention, and accountability. And, Madam Speaker, we know that the government cannot end this problem alone. The solutions must come from the ground up, from communities who know the needs, risks, and realities best. That's why we launched, again under the Associate Minister, the $100 million call for proposals to expand community-based programs. And I know the response was overwhelming, and I know that Women's Resources in Lindsay, Ontario, it serves Kawartha the Lakes and Haliburton, the Haliburton Peterborough YWCA that goes and supports my Haliburton area, the Durham region, all were part of these initiatives and fundings and growing and talking to each other and what else can we do. So that tells us that communities are ready, willing, and determined to lead this fight. Our government has worked with the federal partners to secure $162 million to support Ontario's role in the National Action Plan to End Gender-Based Violence. And that funding helps align our provincial initiatives with the national priorities and ensures consistency of support across the country. And through Budget 2024, was added $310 million over 3 years to help community organizations manage rising costs. We know inflation, staffing pressures. It's not immune to those community groups that supply such vital services, and that survivors rely on their support. In addition, the government has invested $13.5 million over 3 years to enhance programs for women, children, youth, and others at high risk of violence or exploitation. These investments are producing results. More survivors are finding safe shelter, more communities are offering prevention programs, more organizations are delivering trauma-informed care, and every one of these efforts, every program, every initiative brings us closer to a safer Ontario. Madam Speaker, when we talk about zero tolerance, it's not just a slogan. It must be reflected in the laws we pass, the budgets we set, and the partnerships we build. And we're doing that. We are taking a responsible, evidence-based approach to describe this issue as it truly is. An epidemic appears suddenly and spreads rapidly, but intimate partner violence has been with us for generations. We recognize its depth, its persistence, the systemic changes needed to end it. This language respects the lived experience of survivors and the research of experts. Name it accurately is not just semantics. It defines how we respond. It guides how we allocate resources, and it shapes how society understands the problem. Ending violence against women requires cooperation across political parties, governments, and communities. And I want to recognize the members that I've worked with in the past, not only the person in the chair at the moment, but members across the aisle that are still there. And truly, we worked on many issues together. about violence, and it's not a part of it's an issue. It's our shared and simple goal. I know that just most recently, the $26.7 million that was announced by our Associate Minister Williams, and also I want to give a big shout out to the Minister of Children and Community and Social Services, Minister Parsa, because we hear from the shelter spaces. They need some more supports. There is more education out there. Many of the things I've mentioned in the past, we are educating people, whether it's through in the school system, it's in our communities, it's in our church groups, it's in our probus clubs, it's in our legions. People are aware. It's not a pretty part of society, but we have to face it, and how do we deal with it? And we need those community partners. But, a place called Home Women's Resources in my Kawartha Lakes area, they're happy about the increase, not only for shelter spaces, but the Family Court and Support Worker Program that helps victims. As we all know, it is incredibly difficult to come forward, to find ways to escape a terrible, terrible situation. And Minister Williams has spoke eloquently about supporting women financially, economic opportunities, skilled trades and development, so they may even still be in this horrible situation, but they're able to find a financial path out, economic independence, and move on with their lives. All these many programs are so important, and they're so impactful, and they are working. And those are the type of proof, that's the type of proof that we need. I know that the previous ministers of Children, Community and Social Services have been wonderful to deal with, to recognize, to work with other ministries. I want to thank the House leaders and MPP Steve Clark for his many years of support when I've been here, and all my male colleagues who support. Maybe it's mainly driven by the women that you see standing up, but it's supported by the men behind us in our legislature. And as I said, I'm very proud of the advances that we have made. I want to say that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, especially through the pandemic, the assistance that was given, funneled maybe through the municipalities as they're the social service providers. A place called Home in Lindsay received over $1 million, was able to add on to their existing shelter beds. They've continued to get programs that give them the tools to even just cameras to watch, not only in the washrooms, because of course, this horrible problem we have with drugs in our communities, but to give them modern tools to deal with the situations that present before them. They have midterm housing to help people move on. And I'm very proud of my municipalities for the work they've done with provincial governments, predominantly, some of the federal governments, but we're all on the same forward-thinking path of how do we deal with what's in front of us, let's be realistic, and what are the pathways. So I know that Associate Minister Williams has certainly, we've been lucky to have her in our caucus because she's worked with these vulnerable individuals for decades before you got here, and so thank you for your leadership and your background that you've brought to this file, so I really appreciate that. So, Madam Speaker, as I close today, we have to go and forefront in our mind with violence will never be tolerated in Ontario. We need to protect survivors, and we need to continue working with every partner, every community to end it. And our government will do whatever it takes because the right to live free from violence is not negotiable. Recognizing intimate partner violence as an endemic is an act of honesty and accountability, and it tells survivors we see them, it tells offenders that we will hold them to account, and it tells every Ontarian that we are united in building a province where safety, dignity, and equality are not ideals, they are realities. So, Speaker, together we can and we will end violence against women in Ontario. Every woman deserves to be safe, every family deserves peace, and every community deserves a chance to thrive free from fear. Madam Speaker, it's time that we continued this pathway and this motion and move forward. Thank you so much for your time today.